Hello everyone, my name is Mar and I founded an animation studio in Tokyo in Japan. Today's stream we will have an author, a novelist, an illustrator who's a friend of mine who did like these awesome books, and I don't even have everything, so I might even have special editions because they're the older ones and the first ones. And we will be talking about storytelling because one of the things that I love the most about running the studio is that I can do storyboards. And the thing is, when you're watching a movie and it's based on a book or on a comic, being the movie live action or animated, and people complain and they're like, but this is not like in the original, or maybe it's better than the original and everything. And true thing is that it's not the same language. You cannot do things the same. And today we'll talk about that, not as in one is right and one is wrong. Absolutely not that type of conversation. It's more about how an animator and a director of animation thinks, how they have to adapt a story and communicate it through screen, and how an author of a book, a novelist, thinks how to communicate even the same story. Today we're talking with Hanna Sandvig, who again illustrates beautiful things, but mostly it's famous for her beautiful, super cozy, super lovely, will make you want to eat sweets, fantasy romance series of like the Glass Gate, Frost Gate, the Rose Gate, the Wolf Gate, many gates. Hanna, okay, why is it not working? Why is the screen black? There you are! Hi, Hanna!
Hi.
Tell me about you.
Yeah, I'm Hanna Sandvig. I write cozy fantasy romance, like fairy tale retellings. I was an illustrator for, I don't know, years and years before I started writing. So I also would consider myself a storyteller because even though most of my story is told through the like the words, I love to be able to make the whole book and have the illustrations and have that whole thing. I find that lots of people are always like, "Oh, what actor would you want to play, the characters in
Ooh,
your books
that'd
and
be
things?" And I'm like,
nice.
"I don't want that. I want an animation."
Yay! Oh, I
Like,
forgot to mention that a year ago or so, I actually created the
ooh,
storyboard, like animatic, of The Glass Gate, one of Hannah's books. Basically, what I did is I took two chapters and I tried to make it work as a trailer. So I tried to introduce other key elements from chapters 1 to 5 into there. So anyone who saw the storyboard, like this little video, well, 6 minute video, let's be serious.
it was pretty big.
It was very long. This is the video. I will not play the audio because we will get crazy, but it has audio, it has custom music. It starts with color because why not? Few people participated in it. Like, it's not even me alone.
It is. I thought the voice acting is really good in it, and just overall, it made me like wish that we, had the time and money between the two of
Can
us
we
to
just
like.
make the movie like your books has such a movie potential, like a 90-minute thing. I need to see all the fairies, all the fashions, all the textures.
Exactly. I need to
Yes.
see them too. My readers were so like excited about it when they watched it.
I actually budget like this work and adding like the voice actors and the custom music and everything. I think it was about 7,000, either 7,000 or $14,000, like USD.
I do not keep track of how much my books would cost.
I was like, because I had to budget this for a pitch for a movie, and I was like, okay, I have to
Right,
say like
yes,
how much
yes.
it was invested already. I did not want to know this.
Last year I got a grant from our like local arts council, and I had to come up with a budget for it, and I really did have to just say in the end that it was for the illustrations part of it because I have worked as a freelance illustrator, so I'm like, this
Yes.
is what I would charge somebody else, so I like have an amount for it, but I'm like, I don't know how long it takes me to write a book, like, and how much time do I just sit around thinking about things, like.
Yeah, like I'm not even counting the times on bed that I'm not sleeping because I'm still thinking on how to solve like a plot. I have a guide on the things to talk about
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we both
we could
ramble.
talk about just stuff all day, but
Yeah, let's talk about basic storytelling formats. So I will be talking about anime style animation, like how I do storytelling for that. Hannah will be talking about creative writing for fiction books. In this case,
Mhm.
we're both kind of into fantasy, so most likely we'll go into that genre. So obviously, everything we say will not apply to every single genre. But the first things I want to talk is about like the general do's and don'ts of story writing in the both
Mhm.
formats.
I was thinking that is interesting because we're talking about books versus anime and like more like written versus visual. But it also like I've studied story structure quite a bit, and it really breaks down also to Western versus Eastern storytelling. Like story
Oh,
structure is so different,
yes.
which I like grew up watching like anime as soon as we could. Like I'm old enough that there wasn't as much of it when I was younger, in Canada, but and playing Final Fantasy games and just like consuming a lot of media from like
Mhm.
Japan especially, but also, wherever I could get it from. And I find that then as I got older, I remember watching like Ghibli movies for the first time with people who have never watched any anime, never read any manga, don't know like anything at all about the different storytelling types, and they were just
It's so
completely confused.
confusing. It's so
They're like,
different.
"What's happening? Who's the bad guy? Why is like?" And I was like, "Oh, it's like it's not actually the same." Because even though I studied like novel structure, I have a superpower, and my superpower is that I know exactly where the exact middle to the minute of any movie I watch is. I can go
Okay.
like stop it, and we'll be at the exact center of it.
Oh,
Which, like, as an author, I follow it sort of, but also do what I want because we're trying to, you know, you have to know what it is though, because it is how people experience the story. So if you're going to play with it, you need to know what you're making happen by playing with
how much do I summarize the beginning? How fast
it.
do I explain the character's goals, the character's weaknesses, the character's strength, the point where they have to take this decision? It has to fit this 10-minute rule if you're using like this Western structure with
Yes,
this
yes.
lot
So like
a lot of
that percentage of the story is kind of what yeah,
exactly like
break it down.
how smoothly, like in 1 minute, how much information can you give me without confusing me? But in books, how do you do that?
You in books in romance, you need the characters to meet as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't want to wait too long. And in my stories, because they're a portal to fairy, people want to get to fairy as soon as possible.
Mm.
So I'm like, those things I try and manipulate to get like as quickly as I can.
Mm.
But then at the end of my books, they want it to be really drawn out at the end
Yeah.
because they want to see them having their happily ever after and make sure that everything's okay and everybody's good and
Yeah.
the little dragons are good and the chickens are good and everybody's fine.
Everyone's happy, and there's like
See
a
them
link.
all being happy, and then like skip a little bit ahead and see them still being really happy.
Not to
And
mention that you have other books, so you have to introduce other happily ever after characters into your book to show they're still
I know,
happy.
and that is why my last book got so long.
They get like bigger.
The frost gate should be bigger than it is.
Really?
I had to change the formatting. If you open them up, the glass gate, if you look at like the margins,
Oh boy.
yeah,
Yeah. So, pre your book, The Glass Gate, the one I
yeah,
animated, and I don't want to treat them badly, so I'm cringing now and opening them
yeah.
like that.
So I had to because it was going to be so expensive to print it and ship it.
Do you calculate, like, when doing this structure, is the epilogue something extra, or do you try to add it in?
Both. I do like the epilogue to me is part of the denouement. It's part of like the ending and the wrapping up of it. But then I also often write, as you know, an extra epilogue,
Oh yeah, those are fun.
entire story afterwards, which is just
With its
because
own
I don't know.
chapters and everything, and it takes pens, and readers
Uh,
love it.
I'm always like, it will only be one scene, and then it's like 10 chapters long. What do you think are the do's and don'ts of?
I would say show don't tell, which is done very differently for writers and for
Oh,
like
we're both taught
animation.
this, but it's like it means something different.
Yes. So how do you do show don't tell in writing? Because you're
Right.
visual, right? Like you have words, you're not showing, or aren't you?
There's something we call info dumping, right? Which is where if you're reading along and suddenly the author is just like explaining everything to you. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's because the character just thinks everything, and sometimes it's because the author is just telling you things like, this
Mm.
is the world where this happens, and this is this, and this person doesn't like me because of this, but it's all just written that way.
Can
just
you give me an example? Like,
okay, so for example, most of my books, they're portal fantasy. So they're a girl from the human realm who ends up in fairy and finds herself in fairy.
Yeah.
So she has to learn all the things about fairy because it's so different, right? So,
Yeah.
and we're experiencing it through her eyes. So there's all of the magic system, and there's the politics, and there's what kind of races of fairy creatures there are, and all those things.
Yes.
So I could just have it be like, and then she went here and saw all of this and blah blah blah. But instead I try and do it a little bit at a time and through dialogue. A lot of the times, like, they talk to each other and it comes up, or just walking through the scene and doing things and seeing, like, interacting with characters who look a certain way or give you some certain information. That's so that you don't just go, I feel like I'm reading a textbook about
fairy. Yes.
fairy.
The case of animation would be something similar. For example, if someone is, you see a character on screen, it's like, I am angry. That's tell. If you see a character frowning, that's show. That's like you're seeing them angry. If you see them shouting at someone, they're angry. The face is red. They're angry. You have to let the viewer know, like the audience know, without giving the information, as you say, like as a textbook. In that case,
the show don't tell does work also for emotions when you're writing, because people who are new to writing might say, like, you know, blah blah blah, he said angrily.
Yes.
And you're like, then he'll know I'm angry because he said it angrily.
Yes.
Right? Like, don't go over there, he said angrily. But instead you could say, like, don't go over there, he slammed his cup on the table. You know, like something that shows the anger.
Yeah. So it's like emotion. So basically you're describing what you would see in the series. Like, you don't have exactly a camera angle, but you're still like this, like, writing in text what the reader will imagine.
I have a book. It's called Body Talk. It's each emotion and then a list of physical like movements, gestures.
I want that book.
Like, also, like, what it feels like inside your body too. Like, so it could be like anxiety, and it could say, like, you know, your chest tightens and your breath, you know, like,
you feel it in your stomach. Oh, I want that book. I'll have to ask you later, or maybe you can tell us.
You can get into a rut of always using the same gesture to do the same thing,
like frowning all the time. Frowning.
I know my characters glare a lot, and they narrow their eyes a lot, and everybody always wants to arch an eyebrow. Some of us can't do it. I can't raise an eyebrow.
I can't.
You have to be like, okay, how many times? And then my editor will be like, you need to do a word search for the amount of times you wrote that Killian frowned. And I'm like, but he does.
All right, I'll change the subject to also, like, not do's and don'ts, but question for both of us. How do we decide which character is in the point of view? Like, for example, in romance, it's kind of classic to have, like, the main lead character and their love interest, and they're, like, switching. How do you decide when to choose one or the other?
There's two answers. One is that it depends on how much percentage of the book you want to give each of them, and then you better make sure you switch sometimes. Mine aren't usually 1 and 1, although they're getting closer as I go. I think I was scared to write men at the beginning, but I would be like, oh no, it's been like 3 chapters, I better get back into his perspective. But something I have heard, which I think is useful, is that you pick the character who is going to feel the most pain, and they're the one you go with.
Oh, interesting.
So you're like, who's gonna hurt the worst?
I thought it would be more about, like, who needs to take a decision.
It's that too, but if one of the characters makes a decision that causes great pain to the other character, it's better to be in their point of view and have their trauma.
Sounds evil, but I know it's how it works.
So, like, in okay, so in the Glass Gate, it's a Cinderella retelling, but you know, the father in the Cinderella Disney movie is very nice, and the father in my book is not very nice. A lot of the parents aren't very nice. Fairy tales, like if the parents are alive, they're often kind of evil, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Or else they marry someone evil. But because so my Prince Charming, Tiernan,
Yeah.
has a very complicated relationship with his father because it's
Mhm.
pretty terrible. So anytime there was something that's going to be showing like the two of them have to interact, I would make it from his point of view, not from her point of view.
Yeah.
Occasionally from her so that she could see how things affect him because that gives her like empathy
Yeah.
towards him. But usually I'd be like, oh, well, with the characters in this scene, it's going to hurt him the most, or else he'll have to make, you know, like work through something. Obviously, like my books are very cozy. I don't actually try and cause them like emotional pain all the time.
You sound so evil, but actually
I
everything's kind
know,
of
I
chill.
know. My books are like the cutest, coziest books. But still, yeah, whichever character is really gonna like feel it.
That's interesting. Like in visual now, in my case, it's tricky.
Mhm.
Like it's different because you can be in both sides at the same time. Because you have like
Yeah.
this, but like just change the camera from one shoulder to the other shoulder if like versing each other, things like that.
Hmm.
But there's also a bias towards one character. Like, let's say they're having a disco. Why is everything so angry in my examples today? Okay, let's say they're about to kiss.
They're goody kids. Yeah.
They're going to kiss. Because it's like three relationships. It's I guess in the book too, but you have the two characters, in this case, kissing, and you have what the viewer is thinking behind them.
Yeah.
So maybe they kiss, and one of them opens the eyes in the end and frowns or something, and you show that. In that case, you're both in the one opening the eyes, and the viewer is like, oh, there's something concerning that character, like they're feeling something. Like you don't see the face of the one with the eyes closed happily kissing, but you see the
Right.
other one, and you're
Unless
like,
you want to contrast. One feels this way and one feels that way, and you're like, oh no, they're
oh
not on the
no,
same.
oh no. Or like maybe they open the eyes and like, wow, this is amazing. That I haven't said what type of like, like, oh wow, so this is a kiss sort of thing. Doesn't have to be bad. But I'm trying not to get negative in my examples. I don't know what's going on. A lot of back and forth, and each shot can show both sides or one. So it's actually very interesting. Like I feel like in the book, like if you're in one chapter, like you're doing a chapter of one point of view and you really want to show how the other reacts, you cannot do that, or you have to show it in a way that the other doesn't get it, but the reader understands. Like, oh,
which is tricky, and I do try and do that quite a bit because especially if one character is obviously starting to have feelings for the other character and the other character is oblivious, but you need to like know that they are, which is definitely kind of fun to do. And it's just sometimes I have sometimes my beta readers have to tell me that I have to write more because I write really like almost sarcastically nuanced tiny things to describe how like I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but just like he looked at her, things like that, and you're like, oh, you know, it's a look though, you know, like all kind of is like these little things to like let them pick it up.
That's the tricky thing for any storyteller, because you want to give hints, but you need the viewer to get them. You have to make the viewer reader feel smart, but you have to tell them as a storyteller.
On my Patreon tomorrow, you will read my latest chapter of The Wolf Gate. I'm rewriting a book I wrote before because I am a better storyteller now. But it's an interesting thing because there are two characters who are minor characters who have secrets, and I don't know what order people are going to read these books in. So I don't want to reveal the secret, but I do want people to go, oh, if they've read it before.
And it's even more tricky because the book, Hannah's saying, we have even different timeline. One character is a flashback most of the time, at least so far.
True.
And then the next character is in the present day all the time. So what they know and don't know, like what the readers know, what the characters know, it's so complex.
And I'm making it even more confusing because as I'm rewriting it, I'm not always putting the flashbacks where I will in the final book, because when I finish,
Yeah.
I will then look at the whole story and go for the best emotion. It's
Yeah.
a second chance romance. So we're showing the two characters meeting and falling in love and then breaking up. And that's from his point of view in the past. And then her point of view is in the present. We
After the
have them
breakup. Yeah.
fighting and going through things and then getting back together again. So it's a mystery too, because as you're reading their present, you're wondering what happened.
Yeah, like how did they
For
break
everybody
up?
goes
Why
so
did they
badly.
break up?
And in the past, you're like watching it and going, "What? How is that gonna?"
Like I want them to be together, but I know they're breaking up, so I
I know.
I think it's so
It's
smart,
fun.
but also I can see how hard it must be.
It is one of my very favorite types of stories to read, and I think that it is a lot more complicated to write than I had anticipated, which is why, as my second book, and I tried to make it a novella, is very small, and it is not a novella plot.
No,
So
it's harder than that. Like that's what I was missing when I read the book in the past. Like I don't like books. Like that's completely personal, by the way. But I like
Mhm.
having the how did they meet, how did they fall in love. Like that's my favorite ish parts. And
Yeah,
this
you
book
want to
was
see
missing it.
all
It's
of
like,
that.
but why do they care about each other so much? Like I want to
Yeah.
care about them because I will see how they started to care about them, and that was missing. And now you're giving it to us. I'm like, whoa.
So here what that is I told you I didn't show you.
Yeah.
Because I did it as like I would have like a little flashback paragraph kind of
Yeah.
like of them meeting, blah blah blah, with like a tiny bit of dialogue. But now it's in full scenes and it's in his point of view. I'm actually a little bit worried though. I have to watch out, because when I wrote it the first time, you only had the girl's point of view. This is a Red Riding Hood retelling. So
Yes.
Audrey is my little Red Riding Hood. You only had her point of view and you didn't know what was up with him, and you had to decide if you trusted him or not.
Yeah.
So you automatically were on her side, but I'm afraid that everyone is going to be much more on his side now.
I'm liking the wolf so much.
I know. So I'm
But
going to
so
have to
that's
watch in the end and make sure that she isn't coming across too unsympathetic, so that people like them both.
no, that's the thing. Like you're wondering, at least how I'm reading it. I'm reading it as I want to know why was she so hurt to make her act like that. So I still give her like the okay, like I see her being defensive. I see her being still attracted. Why? Like what happened that's so bad? And I'm expecting like the tragic thing because he's still attracted too.
Yeah,
So
but he's also angry.
Yeah.
And you don't know why he's angry at her, and you don't know why she's angry at him.
That's the thing.
But I'm gonna start foreshadowing it now.
Okay, so how do we create dialogues? Novel versus anime.
Okay.
So what are your rules for dialogues, or how do you work with that?
I mean, both of us do very stylized dialogue. Like, you think always that you want it to sound natural, but nobody actually wants it to sound natural, because
that's not interesting.
We ramble, blah, blah, blah. And because you have to fit all this important information in. So sometimes when I am going to do a scene, I'm like, I need them to talk about this, this, and this, so that this information is at this point in the story where I need the reader to know it. But I will say that my characters, I always said that I don't talk to myself because that would be crazy. My characters talk to each other in my head, and that is not crazy. That is normal. So I have all the dialogue go back and forth in my head, and sometimes it goes off the rails of what I wanted, things I needed to happen, like my stated points that they needed to talk about. They just talk about other things, and I have to pull them back. But I actually write all my first drafts, almost all of it, as dictation. So I go for a walk and I have a voice recorder. I hope I don't run into too many other hikers, because I'm always like,
and they kissed.
I know. I'll be like talking some like sword fight or something. Yeah, it's a beautiful morning. You listen to my dictation and it'll be like, oh, what's your dog's name? Stuff like that, like in the middle of the story, because I'm just like, I don't want to be weird and like turn it off. So I just pretend.
Yeah. I love your system.
I know. I love dialogue, and writing dialogue and like banter, like fun, quippy dialogue is, I think, one of the things that I am strongest at and have always been good at. I remember when I wrote the first book, I was like, I don't know if this book is going to be good. But I'm like, but if I can write some decent dialogue and make them laugh, they will forgive me. And the back and forth is very fun. So I do think a lot about my dialogue, and I do try and make it very natural, but I'm usually trying to make people laugh. And then you also use it, like, especially in a romance, you want, like, no man, we love our man, but no man is ever going to express his feelings quite like a book boyfriend does. And it's because we can make them say all the things that we need to hear in our souls, right? To like,
yes.
and that
Like
our character needs.
most people, like not even just most people, don't
No, the
speak
humans.
so much to express their
I
feeling.
certainly don't. I'm terrible at it.
And anime doesn't work like that either. Like you have the other things, like they will say a thing while embracing, while soft colors, while like you have all these layers.
Yeah, you like, and again, and the music and
the music, yes,
and all of that. I know. I just rewatched all of Arcane with my older two kids. Have you watched Arcane?
Not yet. I have to, so no spoilers.
Okay, I won't give you any spoilers.
I keep being.
But what I will tell you is that it's impressive, the layers of storytelling and how they use every single tool to tell and just really to cause as much pain as possible. I think that writers should sit around and are like, how can we make our watchers just like have an emotional breakdown? Most of the characters survive. Most of them. A lot of them survive.
I think the no spoilers version is worse than the actual. Anyway,
it's very pretty though.
Yeah.
And they use different kinds of animation, and they're very good at the micro expressions for storytelling, which almost that's as close as you can get to being inside a character's head, is to have the tiny little expressions.
That's the thing.
That reveal things, which is very hard in animation.
In animation, sometimes like one cut, like you try that one cut, and I think feel like movies too, like live action too. Like in one cut, you're trying to tell at least like one piece of information, and it can be that the piece of information is micro. It's like something in the background. It can be blurred, but you have to make sure that everything is building to give you that piece of information for the next cut to be going on. And if that is in a dialogue, there's a thing in dialogue in anime, like to tie to the thing we were talking about, or like even in comics, you have to go as short as possible, but you have the support of the face, like the expression. You have the support of the voice actor, like putting like the actual acting. You have the music, you have the video, like the camera setting, you have the background, you have a lot of things. So yes, it's hard because you have to shrink conversation so much and still give all the information we were talking about, like all the world building, all the things. It has to feel natural. Like when I'm directing voice actors, I many times feel it like they're saying a dialogue, and it's like, it sounds hard for them to say, like, this is not a good dialogue. Like this is too long. It doesn't flow.
Yeah, like we can use dialogue, tags and writing to like express it, but also,
of course,
I feel it's interesting because I only started doing dictation recently, like, well, halfway through the Glass Gate, I guess. So about half my books. And if I read them out loud to my children, they are so much easier to read out loud because they originated as spoken words, not as written words. So like it's much more natural. And I've heard audiobook narrators say that they can tell sometimes when an author dictates because it's so much easier to do the audiobook because it just like the language just flows really easily, whereas it doesn't always if you're writing it out. But then also we have the trick of using italics for the word you want to emphasize in a sentence.
Okay.
So
yeah, of course.
I do this a lot. Some authors don't do that, and I like it when people do. It could get overused, I'm sure. But it like tells you how they're talking and what word they're putting that emphasis on. And that's that subtext again of not saying the thing that they're actually saying. I was gonna say I just have it up because I was writing it earlier, the scene that I'm working on. And
I want to read it.
I know, you can read it tomorrow. I gotta finish off the last paragraph. My character is there, she's tutoring him in computers, and they've gotten to the point where they're like, obviously there's maybe some feelings going on, but we're not admitting it to each other yet. So, he was like, I think I have a handle on this. If you shouldn't, maybe we don't need to do tutoring anymore, because he feels bad. He doesn't want to like take up all your time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So she says, how many volunteer hours you need? I asked. More is always better. She became very engrossed in her work again. So it's like the very, and then it says, which is why I need to stay focused for my scholarship. So it's like, it's her saying like, and that she's really thinking something else, right?
Yeah.
But by putting that emphasis on it, it helps the reader know like,
she's trying to put a barrier.
yeah. And because my characters often say what they don't mean, things like that help you to like follow the thread of it a little bit better, I think.
Yeah.
And maybe especially if English isn't your first language and you need a little bit of extra, like, I know that the sarcasm and the humor are the hardest things to put across, I think, to people who, I have had a few people say that my books are very easy to read for people who are learning English, so that always makes me happy.
Well, it's interesting also that I started beta when I was a beta with your books 5 years ago, more. Yeah. I remember asking you questions on having to look at the dictionary a lot, like, what's a fern?
Yeah.
And now it's like I have so much more vocabulary, and I love a lot of it. I'm pretty sure I learned from your books.
And you used to ask me why my characters were so mean. You're like, why is this character so mean? And I'm like, they're not mean. They're being sarcastic.
Yeah, it grew, like, it became, like, I can read your books much, like, flow with them.
I can't, like, read more than news headlines in any other language, so. Tiny bit of French, tiny bit of Spanish. Yeah, so I'm always impressed by anyone who can do things in other languages at all. But yes, we could talk about this all day long.
Yeah. I'll let you go. Thank you so much. I will keep talking here, so everyone stay. Thank you very much for being around today. It's been an amazing conversation. We opened 2 of the questions I had. Happy to having had you here. Every time I do a live stream, I get nervous and everything, but again, I enjoy it very, very much. So keep doing it. Bye bye. See you in the next one.